Hello, welcome to another QA-Automan tutorial, and in this lesson we're going to teach you how to create a first automated test using Selenium TestNG written in the language Kotlin, all written using IntelliJ IDE. And if you don't have an IntelliJ IDE already, all you got to do is download that. I'm going to create the URL link in the description. Go straight here and just download the community version here. Don't worry about the ultimate. I'm using the ultimate, but it's not something you really need for this. Again, it comes, Java, Groovy, Kotlin, all that. Everything's here, everything you need just to get things going. So download the community version, install it, run it, and you should see something like this. And we're going to create our new project here. So we click create project, and you'll notice I'm going to have a little more features here on the left, and that's okay. But what we want to do is we want a Maven project, and then on the far right you'll see create from archetype. So let's check that and scroll down. And what we're looking for here is the org JetBrains Kotlin archetype-jvm. You might not see that on the screen depending, but again, I'll post this in the description of the one you need, but that's the guy you want. And we'll click next. You'll be prompted with a group ID, an artifact ID, and a version. For this, usually for group ID, it's in the form of some kind of website. In my case, I'm going to use com.QA-Automan. If it was Google, it'd be com.google. Whatever website you're working on, I recommend doing that. As for the artifact ID, what is it the thing this is? These are going to be our, we'll call them Selenium tests. You can call it automation. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it Selenium tests. Hit next. We're going to just default with the Maven that we're using. Maven is what is going to be used to build our project. So we'll continue on. Project name, Selenium tests. I'm okay with that. Name it whatever you want. And then hit finish. And now it's going to load up, compile, build the project, do a lot of things in the background. While this kind of builds, on the bottom right, you'll probably see something that says Maven projects need to be imported. You can import changes or you can enable auto import. I recommend enabling the auto import. It really saves a lot of time and headache moving forward where, like you'll see here, you make changes in the POM, which handles all how your project builds, and you don't have to right click and re-import every time you make a change. So for example, here, this version is complaining using, it's looking for 135, but I'm using 134. So I'm going to make this change. It may not be something you need to do, but I want to clear the air now. If you notice, it auto built and error is gone. So again, auto import, really nice. So what happened? In the top left here, we have our project. You should see a POM, which this is what is required for us to build. And in the source, we have a test main, we have a main file, and then we have a test file. Now, before we get into these, staying on this POM file here, which is in the root folder, pom.xml, we have some dependencies, and these dependencies are libraries that we add to our project that allow us to do really cool things like control a browser using Selenium, or using a test harness or something of like TestNG or JUnit. We want to delete these two here. We don't want JUnit and the Kotlin test JUnit because we're going to be using TestNG. So let's go get our dependencies. So how do we get our dependencies? You can just search Selenium Maven dependency, and you'll see results here. We're looking for mvnrepository.com. Which will look like something like this. Again, link in the below. You don't have to find it. I'll make it really easy for you guys. And when you're actually gonna be selecting a version, always I personally like to select the non-alpha, non-beta versions. So this one looks to be the last solid version or stable version. So let's click that. And we want to copy our Maven dependency under this. If you click it, it'll auto copy to your clipboard. Copy, and I'm going to paste this right under our Kotlin dependency here. It comes with a comment. Leave it, remove it, up to you. I always think, comments, you can never have too many comments. I mean, maybe you could, but context is important. So add the dependency there. We'll go back. We'll look for our TestNG dependency. Again, link in description. The latest one, 7.0.0. So let's click that guy, copy the dependency, and we're gonna paste it under our Selenium one. The order doesn't matter for right now. This is the order in which dependencies get installed, so it kind of matters when you start doing more advanced things. But for now, just paste it in any order. It's fine, as long as you don't break the things that are nested inside of your dependency tag. So we have Selenium, we have TestNG, we have our IDE, we have Kotlin, so we're ready to go. Everything built successfully, so let's just dive right into it. Well, let's go to, we're going to delete, we don't need this hello test. We're just going to create our own test. So if you right click your package, we go to Kotlin file class. Now some differences here is you have you see some similarities here with Java. However, there's a file. And in this file, we're just going to create a file, and you can add things into the file, multiple classes. You can make it whatever you want it to be. So for right now, I'm just going to create my test. Just the first, my first test. So it's just an empty file at the moment. So let's create a class because we want to create a test class to run our tests inside. So my first test. And inside this class, it should be, we're going to add our first function. And in Kotlin, for functions, you type fun because it's fun. It's fun is letting you know that this is a function, and then you put a name. What's the name of this function? We'll just say it's open web page. We're going to open the web page, and that's our test. Just something simple. Put it in parentheses, open bracket. Now, notice I haven't put like a void or anything like you're probably used to in Java. We don't need to do that. If you don't put anything there, it infers that it's a void or it's not going to return anything. And to let our project know this is a test, we put the annotation @test org.testng annotations. So this will let us know this is a test. Now, we want to start. We need to create a driver. So to create a driver, we need to download our driver, and we're going to use ChromeDriver for this test here. And I have the link already saved. I will give this to you guys, and you'll have a bunch of versions here. There's version 7.8, 77. You want to choose the ChromeDriver that matches your driver, at least close to it. So supports Chrome version 77. So these two would work if you had either of these versions as your Chrome driver. But if it was if you download 78, but you're 77, that's when you kind of run into some issues. So I already downloaded mine. I have my Chrome driver here. So let's create in the main, not in the test, but in the main, let's create a package called driver. Drivers, we may have multiple, and drag our Chrome driver into this. So here we go. We have our ChromeDriver.exe, and this is the one that will be used to run and control our browser. And in our first test, we need to reference how do we find our new Chrome driver. It's in this folder here. How do we tell it, hey, run that guy? We need to create a system get property, and this is we're going to set this property here, and say we're looking for the webdriver chrome.driver. So webdriver.chrome.driver. And you probably can't see this, so let's zoom on in. I apologize for that, but our annotation, fun, open WebDriver, open parentheses, bracket, and then system.getProperty, and then our key. And then we need to give it a value. Where is our driver? So you can right click this guy and get the relative path and paste. Well, this is half the equation. Unfortunately, if you give the full one, if you run this project on a different computer, you run into the issues it doesn't match. So we want the relative. So we got all the way to the com, but we're missing Kotlin main and source. So let's add those in now. So source main Kotlin / com / QA-Automan drivers ChromeDriver.exe. So this is our relative. So if you ran this on computer A and on computer B, you won't run into any conflicting issues. And now we want to create our variable. And in Kotlin, to create a variable, you say val, which is our final variable, meaning that this variable will be immutable. Driver equals ChromeDriver. Pretty straightforward. Now, you notice I didn't set a type. So how do we know, what is this? What is driver? We know it's a ChromeDriver, but if you were down the page, you want to know what driver is. So it's inferring the type that this variable is. I would recommend for certain variables to actually add what the type is. So you know that driver is a WebDriver type, and it makes it so your code is a lot more readable. So now we have our variable driver. So let's do something with it. So what do we want to do? We want to open a web page. So driver.get. So get is a function that allows us to open web pages. And in our case, we want to open up something simple right now, which will be Google. You can do anything you want. I'm just going to do google.com. It's pretty popular website. And this will just open this web page. Now, when we open this web page, we want to make sure we landed on it. And we're not going to do anything complicated. You probably want to check for something that really distinguishes this page from others, and usually you find an element. For right now, we're going to do something really simple and create an assert that allows us to check, is the URL of that driver equal to this value? Now, the likelihood of this test failing is very low, but let's create it anyways, just to kind of get you started on how to write asserts and checks for your tests. Now, asserts have there's many. There's assert equals, true, false, not equals. You're pretty much checking pieces of your test. Does this thing equal this thing, or is this thing true before you move forward? So in our case, we're going to assert equals. And what are we going to assert? That the actual value, which the actual value is, what is it really? In our case, it's the driver. What is the driver's URL? So driver.current URL. What is the current URL of driver? And we want to say, we expect this value to be this string right here. Now, if you notice, I just copy paste. And a rule that you should always abide by is the DRY principle, the DRY, which is don't repeat yourself. And if you notice you start copy pasting, stop yourself and think, what am I doing wrong? What can I do better in this situation? Sometimes you copy paste just to use it as reference and you change the code completely. In our case, this is just copy paste, like straight up, didn't do any changes. So this is a good opportunity for us to create another variable. We'll call it URL and create this as a string so that we can reference it and put it in both of these areas. And two things you'll notice. The first thing is I'm not specifying that this is a string. The reason why is it's pretty obvious what URL is. It's a string. You don't need to type more characters. It's less typing. It's cleaner. You don't need to always add a type. But something like this is not something you can really infer. What is ChromeDriver? What is that actually returning? So some more of like the these types like strings or integer, you don't need to really specify. At least I wouldn't. It's up to you. If you're really strict and you want to add string, by all means. And the second thing that we did here is now if we wanted to change this up, it's really easy, and we'd be testing multiple things. Now all you got to do is change one value, and you're totally changing your test 100%. So, always think about that when you're writing or if you're copy pasting. So we added the actual what is on the driver. I expect it to be this value, which we set here. And then if it does fail, we need a human readable message instead of it just being like blurb, blah, bloop, look at all this code. We wanted to actually say, well, the web page URL did not match expected value, or whatever it may be. This helps when something fails. You can read exactly what happened and why. Now let's, one more thing before we run this is if you run a driver and you create it, you have to destroy it after, or it'll just hang around. We don't want, a bunch of drivers just hanging around because it will clutter up the desktop, a lot of memory. Chrome likes to suck up RAM. So, let's, driver.quit. And this will shut your entire session down. You always got to make sure you quit. So let's run our new test. And the cool thing is you can just right click and run, and already know exactly what to do. One of the beauties of IntelliJ, and one of the great features that IntelliJ has. So it's going to run, compile, do its thing, and oh, hey, okay. So the first thing we run into is the path to the driver executable must be set by webdriver.chrome.driver. Okay, what did we do wrong? Okay. Let's see. Webdriver.chrome.driver. Oh, I see. I said get property, not set property. Oh boy. That's awkward. Now let's run it. Hey, there we go. So popped up our driver. There we go. We went to google.com. However, I noticed down here we got a failure. Here. And you notice this is still running. So two problems we have to debug here. So the first, let's close this guy. We don't want this to be running when this fails. And the second is we scroll down. The error we have here is that the web page URL did not match expected value. Okay, it didn't. What do we expected it to be this, but it actually was this. It had a trailing slash. Ooh, so that's an easy fix. Good thing we only need to change it in one spot. So that's the beauty of that. Now, second problem is that the driver was still hanging when this failed. So how do we fix that? How do we make it so that this can run if this test fails? Because if this fails here, it will not proceed to the following line 19. It goes 18, it fails, it doesn't run 19. So we need to get this to run. How do we do that? So we need to create a before and after method that allows us to run code before the test runs and after the test runs. So we have two things. We want to create our driver, create driver function, and then our other function is to tear down driver. So we have our create driver and tear down driver. So let's take the bits that allow us to create. So it's setting this property and creating this. So we're going to cut, paste, and then what's the tear down? It's the quit. So cut, paste. Let's clear this white space here. So now you see a lot of red happening here. We need to pull this this value outside of our function here. So we're going to create a var driver web driver. Now equals no. Okay, so what's happening here? A lot of weird stuff happening. We didn't use val. We have this question mark here. We're setting it to null. Oh boy, this is a mess. To break this down, val usually means that this is final, meaning once you set this to driver, I can't say driver equals something else. Let's say edge. Is there an edge driver? Yeah. See, I can't change it. It's yelling at me. It's telling me val cannot be reassigned. Oh, so this means that you're really safe and this never ever will change. And that's the beauty of Kotlin, or at least writing in things immutable, is you'll never make mistakes. However, if you notice, we're now adding a var. This allows you to change this to other things. So, you have to be really careful when you do this. You try to do this as as least often as possible. But we're going to do this because we need to in this particular case. So var driver, and now we have this question mark equals null. This question mark is telling us that this object driver can possibly be null. So that's really great because we have the opportunity to do something with our driver when it's being called. So for example, let's remove this val here and remove this type. That we want to make sure when we are actually accessing this, we want to check to see if this is null first before proceeding. And there's a few ways to do that. There's the lazy way, adding 2 exclamation points. This is saying check if this is null first, and if it isn't, proceed with the function following. This is a very lazy way of doing things, but it gets the job done. Later in the tutorials, I'll show you cleaner ways, but this is an okay thing to do for this particular case. Don't be afraid of doing this. Just keep it in mind, like what you're doing. You never want to make assumptions when you're writing code. So this is going to be null in the beginning, but we know that we're setting this to be a ChromeDriver before we access it in these other functions. Now, how do we run these before and after a test? Because we have this annotated as test. We want to run this before and this one after. So let's annotate these as before test and annotate this one as after test. And so what this means is before the tests run, we're going to do this. And then after all the tests run, we'll do this. This doesn't happen before every single test. This happens once, and then all your tests run, and then this happens after. So keep that in mind. That's just something that allows you to do setup and teardown. So if we look back, what is this complaining about? It could be private. Sure, we'll make it private. Get rid of those squigglies. I don't like those. So we have our driver. We create it. We run our test, and we tear down. Let's run it. Let's see how it goes. And the cool thing is you can just right-click the test you want to run and kick it off. And it will run that one test and only that one test. So created our driver successfully. Hopefully we go to Google, boom, and then it shut down. So and we got green check marks across the board here. Check mark, check mark, check mark. That's good. That's what we wanted. So there you go. I mean, you already are automating and starting to do things with Selenium. And later in a later video, I'll explain how to actually start taking elements from a web page and showing you how to check to see, does it have that image, does it have this element, so that you actually can determine that you're actually on that page instead of just checking the URL. And so until next time, guys, keep automating.